I was arranging candles for my husband's birthday surprise when the door opened with a key that wasn't mine. A young woman stepped inside like she owned the place, then froze when she saw me standing there. "Is Declan still at work?" she asked. Her name was Sienna Blake. She kept turning a thin silver ring on her finger while she waited for me to answer. I told her Declan was my husband. Her face changed in a way that told me she had no idea what that meant. We stood there for a few minutes, trading small facts like cards across a table. She had a key. She had been given a story about a man living alone. She had never heard the name Nadine before that moment. Declan walked in before either of us could ask the real question. He saw us together and his hand went straight to his cufflinks, adjusting them like they had suddenly come loose. It was automatic, the way some people clear their throat before a lie. He started talking fast. He said there had been a mix-up with an old lease. He said Sienna worked for a property manager he barely remembered hiring. None of it lined up, but he kept talking anyway, filling the room so neither of us could ask a clean question. I watched him build the story in real time. Later that week, at a small gathering with friends, he laughed and told everyone I loved inventing scenarios. He said it lightly, like a joke about my imagination, and everyone laughed with him. Nobody asked what scenario he meant. The following weekend, in front of his brother and two neighbors, he asked me to apologize to Sienna for the misunderstanding. He said it gently, like he was doing me a favor by handling it. I apologized. I don't know why. The words came out before I decided to say them, the way they always did around him. That night I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the small ceramic music box my grandmother gave me. I always opened it before decisions that mattered. This time I didn't win the key. I just looked at the tiny dancer inside, frozen mid-turn, and closed the lid again. On the kitchen island the birthday cake still sat there, untouched, "Happy Birthday Declan" written across it in blue icing. I thought about the dinner where he told a story about my college years that wasn't true, and I let it stand because correcting him in front of guests felt like starting a fight I would lose. I thought about how he called it drama whenever I asked a direct question, until I stopped asking direct questions. Sienna left an hour later, apologizing to me on her way out, which felt backwards given everything. She said she didn't know. I believed her. Declan came to bed that night acting like nothing had happened. He talked about work, about a client dinner coming up, never once mentioning the woman who had walked in with a key he gave her. I didn't sleep much. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I stopped trying. The next few days, he was almost cheerful, like a storm had passed and left the ground dry. He brought home flowers on Tuesday, which he never did. His phone started staying face down on the counter, when it used to sit face up without a thought. I noticed how he answered questions about his schedule with more detail than the question required, like he was rehearsing an answer he'd need again. None of it added up to proof yet. It only added up to certainty, which isn't the same thing, but felt just as heavy. I kept the music box on my nightstand, closed, for the rest of that week. I didn't touch the key. Some part of me understood that once I wounded again, I would be starting something new, and I wasn't ready to start anything until I understood what I was ending. The morning it all became clear started like any other. Declan was already late, moving fast through the apartment, pulling on his jacket with one arm while his phone buzzed against the counter. His work call came in before he'd even finished his coffee. He answered it standing by the door, said he'd be there in 10 minutes, and rushed out without closing his laptop. The screen was still lit on the kitchen table. An email from a property agency sat open, the kind with a document already attached and expanded. I hadn't gone looking. It was simply there, the way the cake had simply been there all week, refusing to be ignored. The lease named Declan. It named Sienna. It listed an address I didn't recognize, 2 miles from our building. The date on the agreement was almost 2 years old. This wasn't a mistake anyone could explain with a story about property managers. This wasn't a misunderstanding that needed a gentle apology from me. 2 years meant routines. 2 years meant birthdays and holidays and quiet Tuesday nights I thought belonged only to us, some of which had never belonged to us at all. I looked at the signatures at the bottom of the page. Both of them had signed electronically, the same font, The same date, side by side like two names on a joint account. The laptop had only stayed unlocked because he left in a hurry, the message already open from before he walked out the door. I hadn't searched for anything. It had simply been sitting there, waiting for someone to look. I closed the laptop the way he would have, gently, like nothing had happened. Then I sat down at the table and let the certainty settle all the way through me. Any doubt I had allowed myself to keep was gone by the time I finished my coffee. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't bring it up the next morning either. Something in me had gone very still, and in that stillness I started to think clearly for the first time in longer than I wanted to admit. A former colleague of mine, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, reached out about a leadership opening at her company. I almost didn't answer the message. Then I thought about the lease sitting open on that laptop, and I answered within the hour. The interview happened on a Thursday, during my lunch break, in a coffee shop 2 blocks from my old office. Priya Bennett ran the department. She listened more than she talked, and before she offered me the role, she tapped one nail against her notebook twice, like she was giving herself a second to be certain. She offered me a director position, with a salary that would let me stand entirely on my own if I needed to. I said yes before I had time to second-guess it. The new job came with a new corporate email, one that lived only on the laptop they issued me, a laptop Declan had never touched and never asked to see. He didn't check my accounts, not because he trusted me, but because it hadn't occurred to him that I might need somewhere private to exist. Setting up the new bank account took less than 20 minutes online. Once my new paycheck routed through payroll, the deposits landed automatically, and the bank no longer mailed paper statements, so nothing arrived at the apartment that Declan could ever see on the counter. I found a 1-bedroom apartment through a rental site, toured it virtually, and picked up the keys from the agency during my lunch hour on a Tuesday. Nobody at home noticed I'd been gone an extra 20 minutes. I called Julian Cross the following week. He'd handled a friend's divorce years earlier, and I still had his number saved from a dinner party neither of us fully remembered. He listened to the outline of my situation without interrupting, and when I finished, he lined his pen up flush against the edge of a folder before he spoke, like he needed the desk in order before his mind would follow. He told me exactly what I needed. Financial records. Correspondence. The lease itself, if I could get a copy. Records of any shared expenses. Photographs, if there were any worth having. I started collecting all of it. Bank statements I printed at the library, so nothing showed up in our home printer's history. Screenshots of messages I found by accident and then went looking for on purpose. A copy of the lease itself, which I photographed off the laptop screen before he came home that same day and never mentioned it was missing from his memory. I kept everything in a reusable grocery bag from the supermarket down the street, the kind with a faded logo and a small tear near one handle. Nobody looks twice at a grocery bag. Around the same time, our neighbor Mara Ellison mentioned something over the fence one evening, holding her usual mug of mint tea like she always did when she stopped to talk. She said she'd seen Declan near a building a few streets over more than once, over the past several months. She said it lightly, like weather small talk, with no idea what she'd just handed me. I thanked her and didn't explain why it mattered. She didn't ask. Declan started noticing something was different, though he couldn't name what it was. He began coming home earlier than he used to, texting to check what time I'd be back, something he'd never bothered with before. He tried harder to start conversations too. He'd bring up his day unprompted, ask about mine with more detail than usual, linger near the kitchen when I came home instead of disappearing into another room. I signed the contract for my new position on a Wednesday afternoon, in an office 2 miles from our apartment, while Declan sat at his desk across town believing nothing in his life had shifted at all. By the time I finished gathering everything Julian asked for, the grocery bag had grown heavy enough that I started keeping it at the bottom of the coat closet, buried under winter jackets nobody wore in September. The birthday party got pushed to the following weekend, since the actual day had been overshadowed by everything with Sienna. Declan's family offered to host it at his brother's house, and he agreed immediately, relieved to have a reason to move past what had happened. I agreed too, though not for the reasons he assumed. The night before the party, I sat with the music box again, still unwound, and then packed my laptop into my bag for the next day. Declan's brother's living room filled up fast that Saturday. Cousins, old family friends, two neighbors from their childhood block, all crowded around a table with a smaller version of the same cake from the week before. Declan moved through the room like a man who believed the worst was behind him. At one point, he raised his glass and thanked me in front of everyone for standing by him through, as he called it, a difficult week. He said it with the easy confidence of someone certain the story had already ended in his favor. I asked him to turn on the television. The screen sat mounted above the fireplace, still connected by an HDMI cable from an earlier slideshow of old family photos his brother had shown before dinner. It took less than a minute to plug my laptop into the same cable and pull my screen onto the wall for the whole room to see. The lease appeared first, both signatures side by side. Then the bank transfers, dated and labeled, moving steadily over nearly 2 years. Then screenshots of messages between Declan and Sienna, some of them warm in ways that left no room for misunderstanding. Then photographs of the second apartment itself, the one none of us had ever been invited to see. Sienna, standing near the back of the room with a drink she hadn't touched, said quietly that she hadn't known about a wife either. Mara set down her mug of mint tea, the same one she always carried, and confirmed what she'd told me over the fence weeks earlier. Julian stepped forward, lined his pen up against the folder one more time, and handed Declan a set of documents already prepared for the next stage of what was coming. Elliot, Declan's older brother, adjusted his glasses with one finger, the way he always did before saying something he'd been holding back. He looked at Declan and said he couldn't keep making excuses for him anymore. The room went silent except for the soft, clicking sound of the slides changing on the screen. Nobody spoke over it. Declan's sister was the first to stand and leave the room. A few of the older guests followed her out within minutes, their coats already half on before they reached the door. I stood there and watched the version of my husband that everyone believed in come apart in real time, without me having to raise my voice once. A few days later, Declan showed up outside my new apartment. He didn't argue, and he didn't try to explain anything away this time. He asked quietly if we could start over. While he spoke, his hand went to his cufflinks again, adjusting them the way he always did when the ground felt unsteady beneath him. It didn't work this time. There was nothing left underneath it for the gesture to protect. I picked up the music box from the side table by the door and opened it. The little dancer inside began to turn for the first time since that first night with Sienna standing in our doorway. I told him he'd had a home. He'd chosen to turn it into decoration instead. Then I closed the door. The cufflinks stopped hiding anything the moment I said it. The music box stopped being something I opened before hard decisions and became something else entirely. Sometimes the deepest kind of justice isn't proving you were right. It's letting someone live with exactly what they chose. Do you think Nadine was right to walk away for good, or did Declan deserve one more chance to make it right? If this story hit you the way I hope it did, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.